Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum class. Welcome to English grade 11. Students, I'm your instructor Zia Hamid. I hope that you're doing well. Now, today we are going to see our lecture number 2B of unit 4 from the book. And we have these two learning outcomes and they are related to your figurative language. First one says that we need to evaluate how the authors or the poets use language. How do they use language to construct their paragraphs, their poems, or their literature, including the figurative language that they use, considering the impact on the reader. Because figurative language leaves a very good impact and different effects on the reader. We are going to see how does this work with an exemplary poem. Secondly, with the same poem, we are going to identify the rhyme scheme and also see some other literary or poetic devices or figures of speech in the figurative language that we find in different poems. So I hope, students, that you have a good idea about what is a figurative language. It includes different figures of speech like simile, metaphor, personification, and there are different poetic devices. By using them, the poets construct a very beautiful and perfect poem. And we are going to see that, and we are also going to see how can we identify the rhyme scheme, which is a very important construct, a very important part in a poem. Now, here goes your vertical linkage, where in previous grade you discussed and evaluated how authors use language, including the figurative language, considering the impact on the reader. So it's kind of the same learning outcome, and discuss their own and others' reading critically. So there are different interpretations and readings because poems are, the interpretations are subjective. So you can read others' versions, others' understanding, and then form a synthesis and come up with your answer. All right, let's brainstorm. What is a figurative language? And what is rhyme scheme in a poem? Students, when we are talking about figurative language, the main word over here is figure. It means that this kind of language is figurative. It means that you have to go in the depth in order to understand them. You have to go in the details and then see that why the word was used or why this phrase was used. So figurative language is not meant to be taken literally, rather they are taken figuratively. And there are some tools and devices that we use in order to achieve a figurative language. And when we talk about rhyme scheme, we know that there are two types of literature, prose and poems. And when we are talking about poems, they are having a rhyme, a rhythm in them. So the words are rhyming together. We need to find what is the scheme through which the poem is made. So in order to identify the theme, the rhyming scheme, we need to understand what is rhyme and how we can find it in any poem that you can see. All right. So let's talk about our today's poem by Edgar A. Guest. The title is Equipment. So this poem has some stanzas and they have a very interesting rhyme scheme as well. Figure it out for yourself, my lad. You have all that the greatest of men have had: 2 arms, 2 hands, 2 legs, 2 eyes, and a brain to use if you would be wise. With this equipment, they all began. So start for the top and say, I can. Look them over, the wise and great. They take their food from a common plate, and similar knives and forks they use. With similar laces, they tie their shoes. The world considers them brave and smart, but you have all they had when they made their start. You can triumph and come to skill. You can be great if only you will. You're well equipped for what fight you choose. You have legs and arms and a brain to use. And the man who has risen great deeds to do began his life with no more than you. You are the handicap you must face. You are the one who must choose your place. You must say where you want to go, how much you will study the truth to know. God has equipped you for life, but He lets you decide what you want to be. Now, the last stanza, courage must come from the soul within. The man must furnish the will to win. So figure it out for yourself, my lad. You were born with all that the great have had. With your equipment, they all began. Get hold of yourself and say, I can. Now, students, this is a poem by Edgar A. Guest. It's having a very motivational tone. The mood is also motivational. The message is about using your potential and the gifts that God has given you to the full so that we can achieve greatness and big achievements and goals like great people have done before us or they are doing currently as well. There's no distinction. We all are having the same kind of gift and the different body parts and a brain. And when you combine all these, you get an equipment to use. Now it is up to you how well you use it. So this poem is having a very powerful message. Now let us see how it is made. We are going to dive into the figurative language. So first, students, you notice that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 stanzas. So it means that the poet divided these different verses in different stanzas. All right. Let's look at the poetic devices. So the poetic devices that we have, they are apostrophe, anaphora, allusion, and repetition. These are the devices. By using them, the poet created a beautiful effect on the reader. Let's talk about apostrophe. Now, an apostrophe is a literary device or a poetic device in which the speaker addresses either an absent person or a non-human object, idea, or being, and is commonly found in plays and poems. Apostrophe is seen in the direct address to my lad. My lad, you can see that this is being repeated very much. In the very first stanza, very first verse, you can see that the poet is addressing to a lad and he's owning that lad, that boy, that young boy. Figure it out for yourself, my lad. So this is what we call apostrophe. We are not talking about the apostrophe comma, but we are talking about apostrophe in a poem. So this refers to actually addressing either an absent person or a non-human object. So here the poem is for everybody, for the youth, for the youngsters. So the poet is actually addressing all the people that he has not seen in real life and has not met as well. So this is an example of apostrophe. Now, if we talk about some other devices like anaphora. So this is another poetic device. Anaphora is evident in the repeated use of you at the start of successive lines. In order to engage the reader, the poet used the second form, the point of view of you again and again, so that it is actually very much clear that who the poet is referring to and what is the purpose of writing this poem. Yourself, you can find the examples of you over and again here and here as well. So this is what we call anaphora. Now, Let's talk about the rhyme scheme of this poem. Now, in order to understand it, this poem is having 5 stanzas that is separated into sets of 6 lines. So each stanza contains 6 lines, or we can also call it sextets. Guest, the poet, has also chosen to structure his stanzas with a consistent rhyme scheme. In all these different stanzas, there is a consistent rhyme scheme that we can find. It follows the pattern of AABBCC. This is the rhyme scheme that is denoted by the alphabets of the English language, alternating end sounds as the poet saw fit from section to section. So let's find it out in the poem by ourselves. Okay, let's see. Rhyming words should rhyme. Lad, had. We can call it A and A. Eyes, wise. B, B, and C, C. Again, here, great, plate, use, choose, smart, and start. So A, B, B, and C, C. You can find this rhyme scheme in every stanza of this poem. So we can say that the rhyme scheme is A, B, B, and C, C. All right. Now, when we are talking about this poem, students, you can see that the poet's tone is very much optimistic. It is very positive. It is encouraging and very much hopeful as well. And you can also see that there is a hint of metaphors and other figures of speech. Let's find them out. Now, if you have seen this part, you are the handicap you must face. Handicap means a hurdle, a problem, or a barrier. The poet is actually using metaphor, directly calling the reader or the addressee handicap. So this is an example of metaphor. All right. This is a figure of speech. So, and you can find so many other examples of these figurative language. And another thing that you have noticed in the title of the poem, the poet actually called the brain and all these useful body parts that you have an equipment. And equipment is what we usually refer to electronics or other tools. But he is directly calling this equipment because these things, these body parts, this whole body and the brain and your conscious, this is actually an equipment that you can use for achieving success and doing so much more in your life and get your names in the list of great people who have done great things for the society. And if you see that this poem is having figurative language, you can find different poetic devices, you can find metaphors in it, and you can also identify the rhyme scheme of this poem, which we have seen. Now, another poetic device is allusion. Allusion is subtly or merely incorporated through references to unnamed great men. When we are referring to the past, events or history or people with greatness, this is called allusion. So let's see. Here, great men is used because all the great men, they were also equipped with the same kind of equipment that you had, and they also did well. So it must be somewhere here, the wise and great. And you have also the greatest of men. So this is an example of allusion because it is being referred to and incorporating all these references that we make to the past. So this is an example of allusion. And we are also going to see repetition. Repetition is also a poetic device. This is used for showing emphasis and making a point very strong. So poets often repeat verses in every stanza or at the start, and keep the same stanza at the last, at the closing of the poem, so that it will leave a very good effect on you as a reader. So let's see. What do we have over here in the poem? All right. Figure it out for yourself, my lad. Now, you can also find the same thing in different stanzas. Now, let's look at the last one. Get hold of yourself and say, I can. So, figure it out for yourself, my lad. This line is being repeated. So, there is a hint of repetition in the poem Equipment. We have repetition example as well. So far we have seen apostrophe, anaphora, we have seen allusion and repetition. We also find an example of metaphor. We saw that the rhyme scheme is consistent with A, B, B and C, C. And this applies to every stanza. So this is a very consistent rhyme scheme. So students, in this way we have achieved our learning outcomes that we had. So at the start, we evaluated how authors use language. They use figurative language to create an effect. They use motivational tone, a very positive mood, to increase the effect on the reader. And then we also saw the rhyme scheme and figurative language, like the example of allusion, repetition. There is an example of anaphora and all those things. So students, this is how you analyze a poem. This is how you talk about the figurative language. When you are asked to talk about figurative language, you need to talk about how the poem is constructed and what kinds of poetic devices, literary devices are used in the poem in order to make it a very effective poem. So students, this is all for today's lecture. I hope that I will see you in the next video lesson. Let me introduce the worksheet for you. Here you have to match each poetic device with the clues to help you define it. So we have personification, alliteration, simile, hyperbole and onomatopoeia. The examples are given. Let me give you a very quick overview. Onomatopoeia are words that are taken from sounds, like the sound bang or the ring, flash. These are onomatopoeia words. Hyperbole is, as you know, we have read it, it is exaggeration, telling something in a far-fetched way, in an exaggerated way. We have simile, where we make comparison with as and like. And then we have alliteration, where words are repeated, and personification, where inanimate objects are actually given human-like qualities. So you can understand all these poetic devices and perform this task on the worksheet. Thank you so much, students. I hope that we have successfully learned today's lesson, and now you're going to solve the worksheet. This is your task, and then you can submit it by the next lecture. Take care of yourselves. Allah Hafiz.